The Minnesota Vikings select.
He's a longtime NFL draft expert who's been sweating Vikings football since the Randy Moss era.
Straight cash, homie.
Welcome to Thor Talks Purple.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Ask Thor Anything edition of Thor Talks Purple. I'm here, as always, with my producer, AJ. AJ, I know yesterday you were scouring the YouTube comments for questions for today's episode. What you got for me?
Yeah, so a lot great feedback on the first couple of shows, especially from yesterday's with people asking questions in the comments. Make sure you continue to do so I can grab those for next week's episode. But today we'll start off from, unfortunately, just a Vikes fan here chimes in and says, so would it be time to get nervous if we don't see a Justin Jefferson restructure first and then moves with other players, or the other way around? This kind of stemming off our talk yesterday about the restructuring and the audit of the Vikings roster going into the off season with potentially a Justin Jefferson restructure.
Yeah, it's the idea of like a transition hierarchy leading to like the panic button is kind of funny. I think the whether it's the Jefferson coming out after the season or even before the season saying no, this is the place where I want to be, or a restructure would be a signal of the same thing, where it would be zero panic. But I'm guessing that is going to be addressed. But yeah, the order of the transaction, I don't think as much would lead to the panic as sort of no comments by Jefferson, and then this thing sort of drags out, and then we start getting media reports. I think that's when you'd start hitting the panic button. But I will say, in advance of any of this, I'm not hitting the panic button whatsoever. This is just folks' speculation out there. And so I'm not hitting the panic button whatsoever prematurely here.
How, relatively, where is the panic button for you? Like, you're not hitting it, but is it on the table? Is it even in sightline right now? And if it's not even in the same room, what would it take for you to be like, okay, maybe we dust it off and we just put it on the table so it's there?
Is the panic button in the room with us right now?
Yeah.
If we're defining panic as Justin Jefferson demanding a trade out of the organization, out of 10, my panic for that would be a 1.8 right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Pretty low.
All right. Next here from Ben Cole, he says, question for Thor, is Josh McCown a big reason why our young quarterbacks didn't get developed properly? I think he touched on this briefly, but I would like to hear more about McCown's role in developing quarterbacks for the Vikings.
I think he deserves a big amount of the culpability, yes. When you're going into the second game of the young quarterback's second season, and all of a sudden he gets injured, and then for the next month and a half, all the head coach wants to talk about is mechanics. Who's the guy that teaches the mechanics, right? I mentioned this in a previous episode, but my understanding is that last year, Josh McCown, there wasn't a lot of coaching going on or tutelage with JJ McCarthy. Kevin O'Connell gave him JJ 1 hour per week up in the office, as he discussed. You think of that, right, where JJ is sort of off on his own as a rookie, and the VR system that they said that they were going to use, I'm also under the impression that was not used either. And then you get into the second season, and JJ, you there in training camp, you only play him the one series of the one preseason game, and then you get into the season. There was no talk of mechanics over the summer, and then all of a sudden it becomes this thing. It seemed like Kevin O'Connell was a bit frustrated that there hadn't been more work done with that, or certainly more progress. But that's the quarterback coach's job. I talked before about how Josh McCown, the rookie season with Bryce Young with Carolina, did not go the best. Bryce Young, he had some developmental struggles when Josh McCown left town. Bryce Young's improved. Of course, young quarterbacks improve as you go along. The body of work for Josh McCown is not the best so far. And the indication, it's hard to say, right? Like, we're not inside the building. We're not able to observe like everything, but the work so far, and then the coach's comments and stuff like that, it's not complimentary to Josh McCown's work with McCarthy so far. The thing of the cement drying and stuff like that again, that's Josh McCown's job. Kevin O'Connell's not out on the field drilling down quarterback mechanics for the entire practice. That's not his job, right? At a certain point, the head coach has to delineate responsibilities to position coaches and assistant coaches. And we haven't seen sort of the fruits of Josh McCown's labor, as it were, quite yet with that. So I'm not super bullish on Josh McCown, and we'll see the progress with McCarthy down the stretch here, but haven't been the most the most promising so far.
What needs to change for you? And maybe the first question is, if you had final say on the decision, you get to the offseason, if you could cut him loose and bring in somebody else to be the quarterback coach for the Vikings, would you? Because there is that history, and I think you brought this up on the Tuesday episode with Judd, which was Josh McCown, formerly with Carolina, had one of the first guys to get his hands on Bryce Young. He leaves. Bryce Young, he's definitely not, I think, living up to first overall pick quite yet, but he has taken big steps, and you've seen that at times so far this season in his post Josh McCown teachings. Do you still think that Josh McCown should be back with the Vikings come next season? If not, do you have anybody in mind?
No, I don't. I do not believe Josh McCown should be back with the Vikings next season. I would prefer someone that teaches mechanics, someone that the young players will actually, show developmental progress under their tutelage would be great. There's a whole could throw a dart and hit a quarterback coach that I would prefer here to Josh McCown, to be frank. And beyond that, Grant Udinski, who left for the Jaguars, someone I would have preferred this season over Josh McCown.
All right. Next one comes to us here from, I believe it's Why Not on Site. There's a lot of Y's and T's and N's and whatever. But he says, question, with young quarterbacks, what would you think of the Vikings going back to a 2-back offense? My thought is that they could have one block and one roll out for a screen, or both roll out for a screen, one left, one right, or one leads for the other one on a run. Talk me through this and your understanding of how maybe a 2-back offense might benefit a young quarterback, allow them to get the ball out quicker, and maybe just take some pressure off them, not having to let plays maybe develop as much downfield looking for deep shots all the time.
Well, it's funny that, I looked into the numbers on this a little bit. Last year, 2024, the Vikings actually ranked 6th in the league in 2-back usage. The year before, though, it was roughly half the percentage. Last year was 12%. Year before, 6.7. Year before that was 8.4. Some of that stuff is just circumstantial, but the idea would 2-backs the usage of 2-backs more help a young quarterback. I don't know if I'd say that. In the modern NFL, the reason that you spread the defense, you're trying to get not only playmakers in space, you're trying to thin out the box, right? And the decision making as far as clear passing lanes and everything like that, it's advantageous, I think, to have the field spread out there. And then you also you can absolutely make the argument, and I think the NFL has shown this, that thinning out the box is as advantageous, or maybe even potentially more, for a running game than having the lead, the Tom Rathman or whatever, the lead blocking back. Now, I think that the way that you're sort of the new school molding with the old school, I think you've seen that with the proliferation of 12 personnel usage, which the Vikings sort of signaled back when they had signed Josh Oliver to pair with TJ Hawkinson. And of course, they still get CJ Ham on the field and stuff like that. But going back to an old school 2-back offense, you're going to be packing the box at that point. And Kevin O'Connell's passing schema, with regular usage with that, it would have to be totally retooled. So I don't think is a thing of oh, this could become a base part of the offense. But with everything, and Greg Olson talked about this. This has been an interesting sort of subplot to talk about this season. The idea of the defense matching their personnel to the offense and the ways in which smart play callers have manipulated that. First and foremost, at the front of that line is Kevin O'Connell's mentor, Sean McVay, who will bring in the multi-tight ends, and then he'll throw, or else they'll go to the 3 or even 4 receivers on the field, and then they'll run. Right, you are coaxing the defense to bring out more cornerbacks, and when you're spreading the field, or you're coaxing them to bring more linebackers and big safeties onto the field. When you have heavier personnel, that has opened up the possibility for the Rams to go the other way with their play calling. Right, so we're going to manipulate you to bring out the defenders onto the field that we want out there, so that we can call this specific play that's going to be against how you think the formation is going to go, right? We're going to throw out of running formations. We're going to pass out of running formations. To me, that is more where that discussion should go. I think manipulating the defense to bring out the personnel that you want, and then getting creative with that. And sure, there could be 2-back manifestations of that for sure. But yeah, I think O'Connell's version of the heavy thing that we're talking about here, I think that's 12 personnel.
Do you trust that Kevin O'Connell is able to I mean, there's been so many conversations here recently with just like his play calling and should he give it up? Is he too stubborn at times? Do you trust him to be able to do exactly what you're talking about, which is get the personnel defensively based on what you're coming out with and then adjust maybe at the line? And maybe that's where it's almost too complicated for a guy like McCarthy right now, just given we're still talking about mechanics with him and not the more intricate things of this Kevin O'Connell offense.
From the treetops, I do. There's been plenty of criticism about O'Connell's play calling this year, and I thought it was pretty interesting this week that both O'Connell and Wes Phillips are up at the lectern, kind of putting their hands up and being like, there has been instances of play calling, being the issue, or we need to modify the offense even more. O'Connell was talking about the thing of like, instead of like, the traditional way where I see, there could be an opportunity here, but it's in his traditional sort of downfield, 5-7 step drop type offense where, maybe we need to mold the play calling more to our personnel in the moment than to these things that I'm seeing on film downfield, that are more a part of our traditional offense and trying to attack that. More of the quick hitting stuff that we've been talking about. I think we talked on yesterday or the day before show about how, O'Connell, when he went to, he sort of begrudgingly went to more, quote unquote, quick hitting concepts, but you're just adding screens, right? And there wasn't a diversification of that, for instance, a quick slant or stuff like that. And then you go right back to the downfield stuff. And I think for the defenses, it has not been super difficult to ascertain times when the screens are coming. You saw that in the 3-play stanza. Was it the first drive of the game a couple games ago with McCarthy where they drive it down and then they call 3 straight screen passes? And the defense was right up on them. And then you had to end up kicking a long field goal. I think the Vikings are kind of telegraphing the times where they're going to go to the screen. I've been asking for this for over a month. I'm not convinced I'm going to get it, but I would like other quick hitting concepts added in addition to screens. So hopefully, like right now you're a 2-pitch pitcher. You have a fastball, you have a changeup, right? Like, can we add another thing, and targeting over the middle of the field on quick hitting concepts, just different stuff like that. Of course, I've also advocated for Ty Felton. I think this is the one thing that Ty Felton can do is quick hitting concepts, try to hit him on the hands in space within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, just really quick, and then just see what he can do after the catch. That's the thing that he was good at in college, or at least his last year there at Maryland. But that's what I would advocate for. But overall, like long term, do I trust in O'Connell? Absolutely. As a play caller, as an offensive schemer, it's his gift. And sometimes with geniuses, sometimes people, that are advanced in a certain way of thinking, there's a certain intractability there. And I think what you've seen this fall is Kevin O'Connell slowly coming to grips with this and reconciling this. And my hope, maybe this is being far too optimistic, but that this sort of growth that you're seeing out of, or at least I shouldn't say growth, at least the recognition of it out of O'Connell, that could in the future, you're thinking about offseason planning and that sort of stuff, that maybe we can get closer to a marriage of JJ McCarthy's game and the way that Kevin O'Connell sees offense. And, that goes back to, for folks that saw the Kurt Warner video where he was breaking down the Viking offense, and he was talking about the reasons that he doesn't like fixed progression offenses where it's the 1 to the 2 to the 3, and you have to stay sort of with that. And you're not allowed sort of in the moment to deviate from that when the defense flips the script on you. When Micah Parsons is blowing past the left tackle again and is on your doorstep in less than 2 seconds, or Justin School's in at left tackle, and we got the turnstile situation of, can we break the thing off and then go into a little bit of ad-libbing and get outside of the pocket and we can create. Because I think there could be a beautiful marriage with that down the line, but that's going to require O'Connell to sort of meet in the middle here with McCarthy's skill set. I don't think that's going to, I mean, obviously that's not going to happen this year. Some of this stop-start stuff, it's like run my system. And now we're finally acknowledging that some things need to be changed, but we're also trying to get the young quarterback off the ground. I think when McCarthy's more comfortable, the game slows down for him. He's more comfortable with what he's seeing, and maybe there's not as many voices in his head to do this, do that, and people contradicting and, all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden he's sort of overloaded. That then you can get into a better thing of you're going through the progressions unless, the play gets blown up early, and then, you can ad lib, giving a little bit more free reign for that. Although I will say too, O'Connell had talked about the importance. I'm just playing devil's advocate to my own point, but O'Connell had talked about, after, the Atlanta game and here over the last, month and a half about the need to keep JJ McCarthy healthy, to have his mobility for him that they wanted, play him at 100% so that he has access to his mobility, but that, we need to try to keep him healthy, and keep him out of harm's way. That might be some of it too. You recall the touchdown run in the Chicago game on the RPO and different stuff like that. We haven't seen quite as much of that, and hard to quibble with that when McCarthy runs for that first down against Green Bay, and then his head gets driven into the ground, suffers a concussion, misses another game. So I understand there's more to it than just the way I was, there's more factors involved. And this year, when you're playing behind an offensive line that it seems like series in, series out, it's a different it's like a Rubik's Cube. And every time you're seeing a different face of it with that offensive line. You've seen the issues that they've had in pass pro. As a group that hasn't coalesced yet and is frequently playing backups. And so because of that, that might be another reason that you're not sort of encouraging McCarthy with that, of like, we don't want to put you in harm's way. So I did want to give that benefit of the doubt as well. I'm sure that there's a little part of that, but I'm talking about, into the offseason, thinking about this offense in the future. And if indeed Kevin O'Connell, the guy who picked McCarthy, if you're hitching your wagons to him going forward, ways we can think about molding this offense where it can be the best of O'Connell and then the best of McCarthy's game as well.
HBK chimes in here. He says, first off, guys, love the episodes. Love AJ and Thor. Thank you very much.
Thank
HBK.
you.
He says, but, and this is a theme of some of the comments from the past couple of days. This is the first one I picked. He says, but please get Thor a new microphone. And I know we have some developments on this. Thor, do you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, microphone's on the way. New microphone will be here any day now, certainly by Monday. So yeah, we will have the new microphone heard. I can't speak to the quality of mine now because it's being replaced, but the last couple episodes with it here, we'll say la vie to it, and we're moving into a new microphone era here real soon.
I'll just kind of spin off of this. What's it been like for you kind of with the shift of, I don't know what your working situation was prior to this, because from my understanding, it was more remote, right? Like you weren't going into an office or anything like that. But now Hubbard Radio, you're in the Twin Cities, you're local. What's it been like for you going into an office area where there's hundreds of people in a building and, being able to kind of bounce back and forth? What's that been like?
It's so funny. I was telling someone this, that like, because for people that don't know, I started my career, I out of undergrad, I covered the Twins for a season as they called us an associate reporter. Really, it was glorified intern, but I did get to cover the Twins for the last half of the season in 2008. So I graduated May 15th or something like that, middle of May from, ironically enough, the sweatshirt I'm repping today, University of Kansas. And then I drove up to Minneapolis, and I was in the Twins clubhouse the next day, and the rest of the home games in 2008, I got to cover. But after that, I worked for NBC, and it was always remote. I would go into their office building in Connecticut, Stamford, like once per year. But outside of that, I never got to go into an office. And then my job since then with Fantasy Pros and Fantasy Life, it was kind of the same thing. And so I was telling someone, after you get to go into the Hubbard building now, that like I'd always kind of been jealous of people that get to go into an office, because I just never did that in my career. And maybe I wouldn't do it like every day, but just being able to go in there and say hi to everyone, the cafeteria, all the different stuff, all the different studios in there. I haven't recorded out of one of the ones there yet, but I'm super stoked to do so. As much as I love my home setup here, but yeah, no, it's cool. It's different. And I love the job that I've started. I'm not done with the first week yet, but I really appreciate all the nice comments and everything and all the support that folks have had. Like AJ and I have been blown away with the response. So I just wanted to say to everyone, as I finish out my first week here of shows with Score, I just really appreciate the audience. Like, y'all are the real MVPs for real.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that a little bit, when I know YouTube wise, we're kind of picking up things on the Score North channel, which has been established. But as Thor's mentioned on the past previous episodes, which is these are brand new RSS feeds, like podcast feeds that we're posting to for the Thor Talks Purple on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And so it's really tough to just start basically from scratch with that because you can't link it with other stuff. So it's been an awesome outpour to see people liking, subscribing, leaving 5-star ratings, sharing links, and that type of stuff because the growth we've seen over the first 3 days here is not it's not normal. So like, and I mean that in a good way. So it's been very, very awesome to see the reception that we've gotten so far.
Yeah, appreciate everyone out there again. Yeah, really, really cool. And if you didn't understand anything he just said about RSS feeds and different channels, I don't really either. That stuff sort of above my pay grade. But I know starting a new one, y'all helping to share it, review it, the likes and stuff like that. You know, I know it gets annoying on every show. It's like like and subscribe and like stuff like that. But particularly important for like a new show. So we have to remind you guys initially, if you'd be so kind, because it really helps with the new channel.
Getting back into the Vikings talk here, Stuart Anderson says, fire everyone except Flores. Bring in McDaniel to be the OC. And he says when he's fired.
That's a new idea. Okay, sorry. I got too excited about it. Rewind a little bit. Start that one. I forgot the offensive coordinator. Who's he talking about with that?
He says, fire everyone except Flores. So we're already off to a great start for you. He says, bring in Mike McDaniel to be the OC because he will get fired. So do it after he gets fired. And then bring in Stefanski to be the head coach because he'll be fired too, he says. GM, I have no idea, but Kwesi isn't the answer. Do you agree with this? Is everybody except Flores cannibal?
Wow. So we're firing everyone but Flores, but then Flores, the last man standing, is not elevated to head coach. He has to remain as DC. I don't know if Brian Flores would be down for that, first of all. I would be a little bit surprised if Flores is like the last man standing in this thing. Yeah, like I respect Brian Flores as a defensive coach quite a bit, obviously. But Kevin O'Connell is not the issue here. Kevin O'Connell, again, we've had criticism of Kevin O'Connell. But it's one of those things of like, my coach, when I played football back in the day in high school, like he was getting on me one day, and I used to play center. That was my position. But he told me when I stop yelling at you, that's when you should be concerned because that's when I've given up on you. That's us with Kevin O'Connell. We haven't given up on you yet, Kev. So when we're talking about some of these micro sort of things that we're complaining about with Kevin O'Connell, I mean, that's what it is. And also because we think he has the ability to adapt. But I don't think that's the issue. I do think he's the guy to lead the team. Brian Flores, you love him as a defensive coordinator. I'm curious to see if he gets a head coaching job in this scenario that the gentleman's outlining. If the rest of the staff was fired, you would either have to elevate Brian Flores to head coach or he's going to walk on you too. There's going to be other organizations at least that are happy to have Brian Flores as a defensive coordinator. The head coaching thing with Brian Flores, we'll have to see. But the way he laid that scenario out, I don't see that as plausible. But yeah, it was an interesting idea. I mean, we've heard all kinds of iterations of who's going to get fired, who's going to get elevated, who's going to get hired. So I do appreciate the suggestions and the ideas and the creativity on this one. But I think Vikings fans, if you sack Kevin O'Connell and then you hire Kevin Stefanski to replace him, I don't think the fan base is going to be super pumped about that.
Well, if they do follow suit with Stewart's suggestion of firing everybody, there's going to be openings on the coaching staff. And so MB Skoll says, would Harrison Smith, because you expect him to retire after this year, who knows what he has planned afterwards, but would you expect Harrison Smith to be on the coaching staff at any point post-playing? I mean, that's a smart guy. Like, that's a guy where you can clearly see, even right now, the legs maybe aren't there. His body has slowed down, but his mind is as good as ever. So he has the knowledge. So do you think he'd be a good coaching addition at some point?
This is an interesting one. it's interesting because in terms of knowledge of the game, instincts, ability to teach the younger kids that young Viking defenders have talked for years about the ways in which Harrison Smith helps them. Offensive players have. But certainly the defenders, the Viking coaching staff has talked about Flores' complex system. A lot of times you'll see it kind of take a step back, or there's been some wonkiness at times when, past couple of years when the times when Harrison Smith is off the field, right? Because of his ability to sort of direct traffic, and he sees everything in front of him and everything like that. Schematically, I'm sure he'd be good. I know he would be a good position coach. I mean, what better guy to teach safeties what to be looking for when you have the all 22 vantage point as sort of the deep center field safety, or, and the times when he creeps up to different stuff like that, for sure on that account. Where it's an interesting question is, there's Harrison Smith as a person, right? And when, there was the thing this off season of Harrison Smith hadn't even asked his agent after the season about, anything with re-signing. And then I think the story went that then he said that Kevin O'Connell called him one day and was like, you down for another season? And Harrison's like, okay, is that a guy where he's, it's a guy who likes to be out hunting and he has other sort of interests, and it's not, what he was indicating with those anecdotes is after the season, I was sort of keeping to myself and doing my thing and stuff that I like to do outside of football. And I wasn't really thinking about that. And I'm not trying to take one little cutesy anecdote that you tell to the media right when you sign and sort of extrapolate from that the next 20 years of Harrison Smith's life. So Harrison, if you're watching, I ain't trying to do that to you. I'm that not a pending contract, but if you're looking into the kind of dude he is, I do wonder if you would have to imagine that there would be interest in that from NFL team, college teams, whatever. But is Harrison Smith, when this thing is done, is he just going to want to do what he was doing at the very end after the last season got to, after that playoff game, and just kind of go off and be on his own? We see, retired players and retired players of prominence. We see it all different ways, right? Some of them just fade into the background, and then you hear from them 20 years later, and it's oh, for instance, this one just popped into my mind, but this morning I get up, I logged into Twitter, and first thing on my For You page was, I'm going to give you a free advertisement right here. But Jake Reed had a tweet out that said, it's oh, we're selling the 3 deep t-shirts, and stuff. I was like, oh, Jake Reed, you see guys that just sort of, you're oh, that guy from a long time. But then you also see the guys that obviously want to get into coaching. You see the guys that obviously want to get into broadcasting. I don't think Harrison Smith is going to be a broadcaster, but I think coaching, look, I ain't gonna, that guy could absolutely. It's going to become, what does he want to do? But it's an interesting idea just because of what a brainiac that dude is.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is you can have all the brains in the world and knowledge of the game, but not everybody's a great teacher. Not everybody's a great coach. I think
that's true.
Everybody can vouch for. You might have had a teacher growing up in school where you're why are you into this? You obviously know the stuff, or even you go to college and it's you obviously know the stuff, but you just don't interact one-on-one or to a group and explain the thoughts well, and you almost get frustrated when people don't pick it up as quick. I'm not saying that is Harrison Smith, but just because you have the knowledge doesn't always make for a good coach or something like that as well.
There's been a lot of legendary players that did not turn out to be your coaches because you're sort of why can't you do it the way I did? And it's well, because I'm not the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the one, So, but just sort of projecting it out in the way that Harrison Smith talks about the game. It's clear what a brainiac is. You'd think you'd be able to do that, but we'll see.
All right. Hey, we got time for one more here. And so let's maybe finish off with a draft question.
Yes. Love it.
Jason Barham here chimes in. He says, ask Thor, how many elite prospects are there to be currently in the upcoming draft, and how do these positions that they play benefit the Vikings' needs? Just trying to gauge our chances of selecting one of those types of players. Thanks in advance. And it's tough because right now, sitting at 11, Thor, there's always that elusive 2-word phrase that I think a lot of draft heads don't like: trade back. But if they don't fall to there, it might very well be the case. That is what we did yesterday in our 2-round mock exercise, going back from 11 to 14, still getting a guy that you valued pretty high. But just to round back to it here, Jason wants to know, how many elite prospects do you see just in terms of the entire draft? And then of those elite guys, do any of them benefit what the Vikings need here upcoming in the offseason?
Well, as far as the elite prospects, so I'm going to go non-quarterbacks. Although before I get into that, I should say I don't know if any of the quarterbacks in this class, if I would call them elite prospects.
Okay.
So like, you have, we talked about but Mendoza, Ty Simpson, those are guys, I certainly not Ty Simpson. But for me, Mendoza, I wouldn't consider him elite either. I want to see the way Dante Moore finishes this season, the Oregon quarterback. But for the Vikings, not as topical. But yeah, I don't even know if I would consider, those guys elite prospects. But in this class, guys that I would, Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher from Miami. I think he is just so dang good, destructive against both the run and the pass. Not a need area for the Vikings, but had to bring him up. Peter Woods from Clemson is a 3 technique guy who causes lots of disruption. I would put him, I would give him the elite designation. Peter Woods is so gifted that as a true sophomore, Clemson played him as an edge rusher for half the season. They didn't switch him out there until like halfway through the year and then just seamlessly switched back to 3 technique and was doing his thing in there, despite the fact that Peter Woods is 6'2", 315 pounds. You go back and you watch the first half of Clemson's 2024 season and you have like the all 22 on the defense, you will see Peter Woods frequently lined up as an stand-up edge rusher. Like it's pretty crazy. That guy's ludicrously athletic and like I said, caused a lot of havoc. I would have to put Arvell Reese, the linebacker from Ohio State, in that as well. That's your dude where it's like Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter, like sort of that line of continuum. Just this time we're going out of Happy Valley and going a little bit over there in the Big Ten to Columbus. But Arvell Reese, the edge, the former defensive end edge defender who then switched to off-ball linebacker, but frequently goes back and rushes off the edge. Again, lots of similarities there to whether it's Micah Parsons, whether it's Abdul Carter. So it just seems like we have another dude like that off the conveyor belt. And then the last 2, so I think I just named 3. The last 2 that I'm going to say are at, the non the positions that get poo-pooed in the draft, but have to do Caleb Downs, who we talked a lot about yesterday. So I won't get too much into that, but Arvell Reese's teammate there with Ohio State safety. Those guys, for folks out there that haven't seen a ton of college football this year, you're going to get to see them plenty down the stretch here if you want to in the college football playoff, because Ohio State's going to be going there for a while. And this coming Saturday, 1 against 2, Ohio State against Indiana. So Viking fans getting excited for a potential top 10 pick might want to tune into Ohio State there a little down the stretch. And then the last one I'll bring up is another one that this guy Viking fans are talking about even more than Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs and this guy, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion this spring, and that's Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back. Lots of similarities there to Reggie Bush. Lots of similarities there, including I think you're going to have to, or you're going to want to have. You're going to want to have a 1B back with him.
Okay.
But in terms of the explosion, 6 foot, 210 pounds, that dude's going to run a 4.3, and perhaps in the low 4.3s, he's going to jump over 40 inches. Like, get your popcorn ready for Indianapolis in late February. Jeremiah Love's going to go there and put on a show. And what has impressed me this year, Jeremiah Love, he showed during his career the explosion with the running, generating the explosive runs on the ground. What I don't want to say concerned about, but what I wanted to see this year heading into this season, we hadn't seen him used as dynamically as a receiver up till this point in his career. Up till this season, it had been a lot of swing screens if you used him in that way. This year, you saw Notre Dame diversify that with Jeremiah Love. You are now seeing him being sent down the field, running wheel routes, doing all kinds of things, breaking ankles before the ball is in his hands to create separation. And then you hit that kid in the hands in space. Watch out. He turns upfield and the defense got a problem. That's where you have the red sirens going on around the stadium, like Jeremiah Love is loose. Yeah. And now you got to try to track him down, and ain't no one run as fast as that guy. And he's got the instant accelerator button too. I've talked because people ask me about Jeremiah Love. With the way that Kevin O'Connell sees offensive football so far, you wonder if my concern with that has been will that become a wasted asset. But if I'm talking about Kevin O'Connell sort of, rethinking sort of some stuff with offensive football over the summer, different stuff, how we could modify the system just a little bit. getting McCart, the young quarterback there, getting him an explosive running back that's also an awesome receiver, that could really, really help. And so I'll be curious to see sort of how that plays out. Obviously, if we get the expected Aaron Jones release right after the regular season, and then there's not another running back transaction leading up to April, we'll start talking about this more and more, because then the Vikings will be tipping off to you that they will be selecting a running back in April. Stuff to keep an eye on. But yeah, Jeremiah Love would be the fifth name, non-quarterback name for me on that list.
All right. So that wraps up for this one. I'll let you kind of take us home here. But remember, everybody, for next week's Thursday episode, Ask Thor Thursday, leaves comments in the YouTube below. Let us know what you want to hear from, what you want to know more about. If I'm not asking enough questions on certain things, you could do my job better, please get in the comments and tell me, and I will make sure I ask Thor next week. But Thor, take us home.
Yeah, if y'all would, and again, thank you everyone out there for the support. Yeah. We've been blown away by it. Love you guys. If you do us the favor of liking, subscribing, writing a 5-star review. Next week, I'm going to shout out people that have written out a 5-star review at the end of a show. So please do that, and we'll shout you out. And tell a friend, and we would appreciate that. Tomorrow on Thor Talks Purple, we have a Friday special edition, a segment. We're going to have a show concept. We're going to have the rest of the regular season, which is Prop Friday. I'm bringing on our friend Leighton, who you guys know from the Before We Die show. We're going to go through every prop that is on player prop that is on the board for the Vikings game against the Commanders. We're going to break them all down, and we're going to give you our picks over or under against all those numbers. So join us tomorrow for Thor Talks Purple.